This is Georgetown, the podcast. Georgetown County and the city. Georgetown is growing, changing, expanding, and blossoming. The Hammock Coast of South Carolina. It's a renaissance. This is Georgetown, the podcast. Here's your host, Scott Richards.
Welcome back to Georgetown, the podcast. It is a podcast about all things Georgetown, Georgetown City, Georgetown County. It is an area that is going through a renaissance, but it's also an area that it has a history going back at least 250 years. Today, we're going to talk about a very special place, and with me, our guest is George Chastain, and I want to get this right. You're the executive director, you're the Hobcaw Barony guy.
I guess that's a good way to say it. I'm the executive director for the Belle Baruch Foundation. The foundation owns the property there at Hobcaw, and my background is in forestry. I do the natural resources work, but very much spend a lot of my time as the executive director in that role.
I want to do some basics. Exactly where is Hobcaw Barony located for people? Because a lot of people in Charleston, North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, they're working their way towards Georgetown for vacations and a day trip. Where are we located?
Hobcaw Barony is just across the river from Georgetown on Winyah Bay, 16,000 acres between Georgetown and Pawleys Island, just off US 17.
16,000 acres, that's a lot of land. Let's go back to, you said this is part of the Belle Baruch Foundation. Let's go back to that. What is the Belle Baruch Foundation?
Well, if we look back at our ownership at Hobcaw Barony, it really does trace back to Belle W. Baruch. Belle Baruch purchased the property from her father starting in 1935. By 1955, she became the sole owner of the property at Hobcaw Barony, used it for her winter home, but then in 1964, when Belle Baruch passed away, through her will, she protected the property, left it in a trust to benefit the schools and colleges in South Carolina for research and education.
Who was Belle Baruch and who was her father? Where did that property start, or when did that property start? I'm guessing it goes back before 1935.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The property at Hobcaw has a long history. We know from archaeological work on the property that the Native Americans were using the property as much as 6,000 years ago. So it does have a long history. But when we talk about the Baruch family, their connection to Georgetown really starts with Simon Baruch, who immigrated from Prussia in the mid-1800s, arrived in Georgetown, but moved on to Camden and settled in Camden. And then after the Civil War, Bernard Baruch was born in Camden, but really raised in New York. Came here in 1905 to establish a hunting retreat. He was looking for a property where he could establish a winter home in the Georgetown area because he had connections to this area. And started buying the property in 1905. And by 1907, he had acquired the entire 16,000 acres that we own today. And Belle Baruch was his oldest child. He had 3 children. Belle was the oldest, born in 1899. His son, Bernard Baruch Jr., the middle child, and Renee Baruch Samstag was the youngest of the 3 children. But Belle is the one that really had a passion for the property, and she's the one that began to acquire the property from her father.
Does the Hobcaw Barony and that land, have you looked, now that we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States, have you had any impact on that? Have you looked and said, back in the Revolutionary days?
Well, we are trying to learn more about that history, that colonial history, and it does go back to the colonial history. Hobcaw Barony was originally granted to Lord Carteret, one of the Lords Proprietor for Carolina, in 1718, I believe, was the land grant to Lord Carteret. The property was granted to him as a barony, and that's where the barony name comes from.
Okay, what is that? What is a barony?
So a barony is 12,000 acres English measure. And to be a baron, you had to own at least a barony. And so that's where the barony comes from. The land grant actually brings the name Hobcaw to us. Hobcaw is mentioned in the original land grant to Lord Carteret. The name means between the waters. It's the Native American word, and the land grant refers to the property commonly known as Hobcaw Point.
If there were 11,999 acres, it would not be a barony.
It would not be a barony in that case. No.
Isn't that fascinating? All right, talk about what is happening there. What is Hobcaw Barony all about? I know that your background is forestry and that sort of thing. Well, actually, let's start with, what is your background? I knew this because you've spoken to a Rotary Club, but talk about your history and how you've come to this.
Well, I was very fortunate to be able to come to Georgetown. I've been in Georgetown for almost 30 years now. Kind of feel like Georgetown is my home. But I grew up in the northwest corner of South Carolina in a little town called Westminster in the foothills of the Carolinas. My family has bounced around the Carolinas and Georgia for hundreds of years.
And I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. I know the answer because I asked you earlier, but people will appreciate, well, some people will appreciate that. Tell me what you're close to up there.
So the landmark that most people reference is Clemson University.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
But we love Gamecocks too. Just let's be clear about that.
Well, we work with all the schools now.
Yes, we do.
We have the University of South Carolina and Clemson both present on the property. And we have long-term research agreements with Coastal Carolina and Francis Marion University as well. So we work with all the schools now, but my roots are at Clemson. I grew up in that area, and I have a degree in forestry from Clemson University. Worked a few years with the South Carolina Forestry Commission, and then was fortunate enough to come here and become the forest director at Hobcaw Barony, and then eventually moved into the executive director's role.
Talk a little bit about the work you do with the schools. What are they doing? What are you doing? What is that relationship about? And while we're doing that, do you do anything with Coastal Carolina, which is sort of our real local connection?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We work with all the schools in South Carolina. Belle specifically, in her will, said that we would benefit the schools and colleges in South Carolina. So any grants we make, any long-term agreements that we go into are going to be with a South Carolina college or university, and particularly with the nonprofit schools in the state, both public and private, but with the nonprofit schools in South Carolina. Our work is focused on forestry and marine biology because Belle was very specific in her will. And she said, specifically in the will, we will do research and education in forestry, marine biology, and flora and fauna. And so that gives us our core mission. And so our work is ecological. We host the Clemson University Institute, the Belle Baruch Institute with the university is focused on forestry and natural resources. They do a lot of the upland ecology work and forest ecology work on Hobcaw. The University of South Carolina has a long-term agreement with us, has had a presence on Hobcaw Barony since 1969. They are our primary partner in marine biology. And so we work closely with USC in marine biology. And then we have a newer agreement with Coastal Carolina and Francis Marion, and a joint agreement. We know that we have a tremendous history at Hobcaw Barony. We've already mentioned we've got 6,000 years of Native American presence on the property. So we have a tremendous history there, and we wanted to explore that history more, and so we created a new institute in partnership with Coastal Carolina and Francis Marion to really focus on the humanities, focus on history, on archaeology, on anthropology, and help us learn more about our history so we could share it with the public through our public programming.
You're watching or listening to Georgetown, the podcast.
What is the public doing with Hobcaw? Is it open for, tours? Do you do classes? What are the projects of Hobcaw Barony?
We try to have opportunities for all age groups at Hobcaw. We do invite the public in to come and visit daily. We're open Monday through Saturday with the Discovery Center, which is free and open to the public. It has some exhibits there on the basic history of the property and the ecology. Then we offer public programming, specifically Monday through Saturday. We offer tours of the property that focus on the history and really do talk a lot about two eras, the slave era, and we visit Friendfield Village, a former slave village on the property.
It's on Hobcaw Barony.
It's on Hobcaw Barony.
What is that like?
Dates to the 1840s. It's never been restored. What we try to do, our approach is to conserve that village, to keep it the way it was when the last individual moved out.
Wow.
There are cabins there that date to the 1840s that were slave cabins for the enslaved that were working the rice fields on Hobcaw. But they also the freedmen continued to live in that village and work those rice fields as paid labor up into the early 1900s and as late as the 1950s.
People were living in those slave cabins.
Living in those cabins.
Wow.
And as they lived there, those cabins were modernized and additional cabins were built. The church in the village was built in the 1890s. We have the doctor's office that was originally built as a one-room schoolhouse and then became the doctor's office, dates to the early 1900s. And so we do visit that village and try to share a little bit of the African-American experience, both the good and the bad.
We think that's important. How big of a population was it at the time? Or during those periods?
It does bring us into one of the research projects that we're doing with Coastal and Francis Marion, because we don't really have one set of records to go to. Hobcaw itself today had been divided up into as many as 14 separate plantations. Different owners, and of course the records were not kept. What we have to go back to is to wills, to probate records, and try to piece together that history and come up with a number. Each individual village was a different size, and there were multiple villages on the property.
These are not owned by the Baruch family.
These were not owned by the Baruch family. Baruch didn't acquire the property until 1905.
Those villages were just on public property, sort of in Georgetown County property, or? No,
these were rice plantations. These were, privately owned rice plantations, and it's what you saw really pretty much across all of what we call the Waccamaw Neck now, along the river systems in Georgetown.
That's got to be a history in all of it itself.
Absolutely. There's tremendous history there that we need to learn more about. That's why our partnerships with universities are so important, to help us learn these stories.
The villages, as we were talking, there were multiple villages, but do you have an estimate on the numbers at the time, or we're still researching that? We're still researching that, but we have uncovered, the researchers have uncovered well over 1,000 names. Oh, so substantial population. The dominant population. And these are workers, slaves of the rice plantations. These are primarily workers on the rice plantations that were field workers. There were a number of plantation home sites, although each of those 14 plantations did not have a plantation home. But the ones that did also had small villages, maybe just a couple of cabins, that were associated with those houses, with the big house, where the house workers lived. So there were enslaved individuals working in the homes as well as the fields. But these were very much agricultural endeavors focused on rice production, and the vast majority of the enslaved were working as field workers. I think I have read the answer to this, but what happened to all of the rice production? Rice began to phase out really after the war. They continued to grow rice. Plantations passed into new ownership. They were still managed for rice production. But rice began to decline for a number of reasons. One of the most important reasons is that we began to grow rice in this country in the western states, out to our west, states like Arkansas, along the Mississippi River, where they could use mechanical means to grow and harvest rice. Much more efficient. They were using mechanical equipment in the fields where everything here was done with hand labor. The other thing is they started to grow a different style of rice than we were growing.
It was more of a commodity rice. And it just became an economic situation where it was no longer profitable here. Then in the 1890s, a series of hurricanes hit the rice field.
I'd heard that.
And those did tremendous damage to the water control structures, the dikes. As those were damaged, the planters just did not have the means to restore them.
Right.
And we really started what we call more or less the hunting plantation era. And that's where Baruch comes in. He came here in 1905, bought the property as a hunting tract because these former rice fields could still be managed and still produced high-quality waterfowl habitat.
Oh.
And so he came here to hunt, not to grow rice, but to hunt.
Are there any rice plantations left in the Waccamaw Neck area?
Most of the rice plantations in the Waccamaw Neck are no longer, there's none producing rice.
Oh.
You still see the names. You see the names in some of the ownerships along the neck. You'll even see the names in some of the developments along the neck. But there is still one rice producing plantation in Georgetown. It's not on the Waccamaw Neck, but it is over on the Black River, and they are producing rice. And so we do have our Carolina Gold once again being produced in Georgetown.
I've seen that, and I'll see it showing up at some trade shows and things of that nature. What is it like being a part of such a historical property? And I ask that in two ways. Certainly you're there every day, working and living in that and being exposed to those villages, but you also live there. Mm-hmm. Is it removed from, does it feel like you're removed from the general mass hysteria of society? What's it feel like to be there?
The everyday experience at Hobcaw, living there, working there, and I've done it now for nearly 30 years, is rewarding. It's rewarding from the natural resources side, not just from the history side. My background is forestry. I do the natural resources work, and we have tremendous natural resources there. We can offer just about any type of ecosystem that you would find on the coast of South Carolina for our researchers to do work. So we get to practice a little different type of forestry. We do sell forest products. That does help pay the bills.
Forest products meaning lumber?
Forest products mean lumber. Until recently, it did mean pulpwood for paper, for lumber, for timber, for a number of different forestry products that are made from trees. That does help pay our bills, but we also get to practice a little different type of forestry, and that we're managing for unique threatened and endangered species as well. So that's an enjoyable part of the forestry job. I get a lot of variety in what I do and get to experience that ecosystem every day, and to be out in the field, be out in the marshes, be out in that undisturbed almost system.
Walking the land that was there 250 years ago and before.
Yeah. But then you also have to remember, always surrounded by the history and the people who came before us. We can see the handprint of how the property has been used in the past on the natural resources that we have today. And to make that connection between the people that were there before us and the people that are here now, people like me that get to manage it and see that continuum. What we do does have an impact. It does leave an impression, but to be able to study how people have used it in the past and understand the impacts they've had, but also the beneficial things that they've produced.
Absolutely amazing. And so let's remind people again, certainly a website and then hours of operation, and we want to invite people to Hobcaw Barony.
Absolutely. We'd love for you to come and see where presidents visited, see the Baruch homes, see Hobcaw Barony. Our website is hobcawbarony.org. You can just Google Baruch or Google Hobcaw, and you'll find us that way. You'll find some history on the Baruch family that way. Our hours, we're open Monday through Saturday, Monday through Friday. The Discovery Center is open 9 to 5. On Saturdays, we're open until 2 o'clock. And tours are every day. So we'd love for you to come and visit us.
George Chastain, Hobcaw Barony. Going going back a few years. Georgetown is full of passion and history. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'm going to have to make a visit because in 40 years I have not made it down there yet, but I am going to do that, and it sounds like spring would be a great time to do that.
Absolutely. Come see us.
Georgetown, the podcast, thank you so much for being with us. Lots more to come.
Thank you for watching or listening to Georgetown, the podcast. Learn more about the Hammock Coast and Georgetown. Read Georgetown Magazine in print, pick one up around Georgetown and along the Carolina coast. Or digitally, visit readgeorgetownmag.com.